Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning from wherever you are joining us from today. Welcome to a Microsoft Reactor Sydney live stream event. I'm excited to have back with me today Faisal Fareed, and he will go into more detail with you in a moment what he'll be speaking about today. Firstly, a bit of background on Faisal. So he is a Microsoft Business Applications MVP and the Managing Director at One Dynamics. He has been helping organizations to define and deliver innovation and differentiation across their products, services, and solutions using Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance Operations and Power Platform. Faisal has a passion for delivering technology solutions into organizations which align to their strategic initiatives. And he has a proven track record of engaging customers to deliver business outcomes-focused solutions. So today's presentation will be about 40 to 45 minutes with some time at the end for question. However, do ask us your questions as they come up throughout in the Q&A section, and we'll try and answer as many as possible towards the end. We'll also drop into that comment section. You'll see there's the additional resources that Faisal has kindly provided that supports his presentation. We'll also drop in there the link to our survey and a couple of other links along the way to our Reactor website and meetup page. And if you have time to fill out the survey at the end, that would be great. And if you'd like to reference back today's session it'll be on our Reactor YouTube channel straight after today, so you can reference back that on-demand version. But for now, I'll hand the floor over to Faisal to begin. So thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Microsoft Sydney Reactor, for giving me this opportunity again. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all wherever you are joining us from. So we are here to understand what Microsoft has been working on from last October or November 2021, which they called as a Project Como. Without going into further details, first I would like to highlight today's topic is Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations FO data sync to Azure Data Lake. We will have a look how the data is residing into the Azure Data Lake, and then how and what tools are required to take this data from Data Lake to the Azure Synapse. It's very high level overview what has been changed and what's the changes coming. Since the topic is very broad, 45 minutes or 1 hour wouldn't be enough to cover up all the aspects of the topic, but I will share my contact details in next few slides. Please feel free to get in touch with me, and we are here to help you out. So this is a very new feature of Dynamics 365 FO. Microsoft wants to sync data into the Azure Data Lake. So you might have heard about Dataverse, where Microsoft is planning to sync the data from Dataverse to the Synapse link. It's quite similar to that approach, but few distinctions. This talk is not going to compare between what is available into Azure from finance operations and how you are going to get data from finance operations in comparisons to how Microsoft is planning or is doing syncing data from Dataverse to Azure. So these are the two different topics. We will focus on to the finance and operations part today, and if time permits today or maybe at later stages, I will come up with the more presentations and informations about the Synapse link which we are working on to from Dataverse side. So just for benefits of everyone, what is the current approach we are using? I just want to take a couple of minutes here to set the baseline, what is happening right now with the finance and operations database. When I say finance and operations, you can say Dynamics 365 FNO, Dynamics 365 FO, or finance and operations. It's the same product. So for what current approach we are following is if we want to export data from finance and operations to the Azure, we are using a BYOD, bring your own database approach, where we push the data from finance and operations using data management module, it's gonna be a full push or an uh, incremental push, where we push data from finance and operations to our data lake. There are few steps involved where we take the data from finance and operations to the BYOD, and then this BYOD, which is an Azure SQL server, sitting into the Azure cloud, you have to write down your ETL processes there, and then you can mesh this data as per your requirements. You can write down complete a data warehouse solution on top of that one, and then you can play around with that your own database which is sitting on to your own subscription on cloud, and then you can connect to your Power BI reports. Power BI is just one example. You can use it for any front tool. So BYOD is actually an export. What happens here? It export a data into the BYOD database, and then this is where you consume your Power BI for end user reporting. So similarly, this is going forward. It will be a sync into a data lake now. Now, what's the change we will see shortly? Before we dig into the actual topic, little bit about myself. My name is Faisal Fareed, and I am the managing director and the CEO at One Dynamics Private Limited. Uh, at One Dynamics Private Limited, we are Microsoft partner, and we are providing managed services to different customers and partners into different regions, which includes Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. And we are providing services across Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Power Platform and Azure. Please feel free to look at our website to find out what services we are providing and how we can help your business. From a professional side, I'm also a Microsoft Dynamics 365 technical solution architect, and uh, I'm also holding an award of Microsoft Dynamics Microsoft Business Application MVP. If you want to get in touch with me on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, please scan these barcodes there. Uh, as we have talked about my One Dynamics and MVP, just a few logos there. Today's agenda is quite rich here, so we will go and try to understand what and how we can cover it. So what we want to cover it today, the few things. I'll talk about how data sync process works from Dynamics 365 to Azure Data Lake, and how we can activate and deactivate a synchronization table or a data entity. These are the two different concepts in finance and operation, just for the beneficial of everyone. A table is actually a data entity in finance and operations is actually a SQL view, or it's a combination of multiple tables. And we will also see what are some of the artifacts or resources or components required for Azure. And this is going to be a very high level. And as we know, we due to policy restrictions of every customers, we cannot present their environments. So I will have a look to what extent I can demonstrate you or I can show you artifacts, resources, and components. Again, if you have any other questions, you are struggling to configure this for your own customers, you can reach out to me. Then we will look at the some of the aspects of the Azure Data Lake. What are the folder structures available? How the tables, change feeds, and entities reside within the Azure Data Lake? And what are the tools required in order to publish these data from tables, entities from Data Lake to Synapse? We will also have a look the manifest, how the manifest and the metadata file reside into the data lake, and how the data is stored actually into the data lake, which is coming from the finance and operation side. So that is a one aspect. On the left hand side of the agenda is actually getting the data out of financial operations, syncing this into a data lake, and that's the end of the one step there. Now, if we have the data into data lake, we want to utilize it. If you want to utilize into the Azure Synapse link, which is a serverless, excuse me, so we have a tool available from Microsoft which is called CDM Util. It's an executable file, and we will see what are the console applications, how you can run this console application, and what are the configurations required and how to execute it. This CDM util is the tool which connects your data from the data lake and then create this data into the Synapse link, into Azure Synapse, sorry. So this is where you will have all the tables and the views which is sitting into the Azure Synapse. So Azure Synapse, think of, is another database which is a serverless, and then we are actually getting the data from the data lake and putting this into us Azure Synapse. And that's where we will connect it with the any output application or any Power BI application, let's say. And then we will talk about the Microsoft roadmap, and I would highly encourage everyone to join Microsoft Yammer group, uh, where you can get in touch with Microsoft program group leaders, and they can always benefit you to keep you up to date with the latest update coming from on in this particular area. That's a very hot topic nowadays. Information is getting changed very quickly, drastically. So I would highly encourage, whenever you will be watching this video later on, it may happens the few of the informations may not valid at that point. So always watch Microsoft Docs article for the latest update. All right. So this is a one screenshot, since I cannot present the customer's environment. So with their acceptance, I'm taking this screenshot. That's where the first step from the LCS, we have to install an add-in there. So you click onto the add-in installation, it will take you there, and there is a link here. It's a very detailed link. Microsoft explains you all the step-by-step approach, what needs to be configured and how. So that's a quick add-in installation. This is actually a very strong, this is a slide here, and that's where I just want to spend a few more minutes here. So let's have a look onto the architecture, which is a conceptual, you can say it's a conceptual diagram, which is, I have just taken this from the Microsoft website. So let's have a look. How the things are working, if you can see on the left hand side of the diagram, is actually a Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations app, and within that we have seen into the LCS, where we click onto the Excel, not Excel, we click onto the add-ins installation. That is actually a export to data lake service. So that triggers, and it copies the data from finance and operations to a data lake. So that's one thing. It copies the data and the metadata here. So we got this finance and operation application. So Microsoft has been building this export to data lake service, and to have export to data lake service, we need to have some installation made in place, which we have already seen in the previous slide. We have to add, we have to install an add-in there. Once we have this add-in in place and we activate the tables and the data entities, so data is copied into the data lake. Into next few slides, I will also show you how you are going to activate the data. So let's move forward. I will leave the rest part of this diagram for now. Let's say we are into finance and operations. We have installed this add-in through LCS, and you can follow all the steps from the Microsoft Docs article, and then we will see that's the once you will log into your finance and operations under system administration setups there, Microsoft has added a new menu item called export to data lake. You click onto that export to data lake, and that's where it starts showing a list of all the data entities. I have highlighted here tables only, but you also see next to the tables, it's a choose using data entities. So you can actually activate a single table, or you can also activate a data entity. As we talked earlier, a data entity is a combination of multiple tables here. So this is really important. Whenever you will be activating data entities, make sure all the underlying tables are activated before entities. Why we are saying this one? What this activation process does, it actually creates these tables into the data lake. And when you will try to create data entities there, it will try to find out the base underlying tables there. As we talked earlier, data entities are views. So views actually build using the tables. So we have to have these tables first sitting into the data lake, and then we will start activating the data entities. So that's why the first slide is saying go and choose your tables there. uh, from a functional consultant or a business analyst perspective, you definitely need some help from a technical person to understand how many tables you have into the each data entity. Excuse me. And then you can play around with a collaboration of a technical person to understand, okay, these are the tables, these are the data entities. Or if you are good enough, you can directly connect to the any development environment, go to the data entities and find out all the data sources there, and find out the tables behind those data entities, and then come back here, enable those tables first. So take one entity step by step. So take customers V3 data entity, let's say, and customers V3 data entity contains maybe 15, 20 tables. Uh, Create all those tables first, activate all those tables first, whatever you need or whatever the tables you need as per your configuration, activate those one first, and then go and activate the data entity. It's a different status showing here, which I'm just showing as a running. All the tables are running. When it turns to running, which means this is already being created into the data lake. We will see shortly there. I will just quickly switch to my other screen, and that's where we have a data lake sitting over here. And then under these are the folder structure. So under the folder structure, we can see tables here, we see entities here, or we see change feeds here. Currently, we are talking about tables here, and the top and the tables, we have all the tables grouped by different functionalities here. So under supply chain, we can go sales and marketing. We can go to the customer groups here, and we can say commission. So this is one of the commission customer group table, which is sitting into finance and operations. Once you actually activate it, it creates a CSV file, which is a data file. CSV file, if you click onto the CSV file here, it is just a data file. It has no columns here. So it doesn't tell you what is this column and what is this column, what is this column. It doesn't tell you. This definition of each data, it's stored into the manifest file. So that's where if we switch back again to our presentation, so we saw here, it copies the data and the metadata here. So the data is your CSV file, and the metadata is your manifest file, which actually saves the data there. So if you click one back here, so you will see these are all the commands here. Now click back one step, tables here, and now what we will see here, go back to the one step, copy and the manifest and the metadata. So we have seen the folder structures there. Now switching back between the different screens. Sorry, because that's actually what's required here. So now if we see, we have activated tables and we have activated data entities as of now. So all what's happening here, when whatever the table you are gonna activate it, it's gonna create all the tables under your storage account, which gets created automatically when you config, when you install the add-ins. So it goes to under tables here, under supply chain, under tables, and it gets created definitely there. uh, Now what's next? So this is you actually what we have seen here as of now. We activated tables, we activated data entities, and these gets created into a data lake. It's that's the end of pushing the data from finance and operations into a data lake. So whatever the process we have done as of now is actually going to create all the tables accordingly here. Now, what is a data sitting over here? As we saw earlier, this is a CSV file. How we are going to use these CSV files in order to connect with your Power BI, let's say. We want to get this data into your Azure Synapse link here. That's the Azure Synapse link. If we see, this is actually a data, and that's a serverless uh, storage account we have created, and that's a serverless Synapse here. What we have done here, if we click on here and go to the, we can easily connect to this database directly from here, which I have already connected from a SQL server. You can connect to this database, which is a Synapse here, and then I can easily go to my table. And this data, what is happening right now, as we saw, we got data into a CSV format, and then we used CDM Util. We will talk a little bit more about now this second step, getting the data from the data lake using a CDM Util, and then pushing this data into Azure Synapse there. It's gonna create tables here, like as we have created our own schemas here. You can create your own schemas there, absolutely, into those tables, into databases, sorry. And these are all the data is coming here. Now if I run the data, it's showing all the data coming out of here. So that's one thing. Now let's talk about little bit more about CDM util. Now if we go back one step, I'll just take this one, and so that's the CDM Util console app. I have pasted a link into my presentation. This is from where you can download it. Use that link to download it and then extract it. This is where you have your configuration file sitting over here. If we open this configuration file, it contains a data, and it says this is your storage account and this is your manifest file. Now if I'll just close this one, I will go back and I will say how can we read this configuration file. There are few manual steps involved here. So switching back to another screen again, apologies. So this is a configuration file. So once you will install a console app, which is CDM Util console app, it has .config file. Edit that config file. It gives you a tenant ID. It gives you the access key, manifest URL, and then you have your tables here. You have your entity and the change feed. So we have different level of URLs here. One is the tables here. You and what it does, once you run this CDM util, it will go and get all the tables from the root node. If we go back to Synapse there, it will go back here under tables, and it will try to find out all the tables under subfolders. So that's what it is doing. It is giving you the environment name, storage account name, and the tables. So that's what we are doing: environment name, storage account name, and the tables here. And then we are saying under tables, read the tables.manifest.cdm.json. So tables.manifest.cdm.json file, it will go here. If you look at this uh, manifest file here, all it's doing, it is actually giving you the supply chain, which is this folder here. Go under this one, supply chain, and read this CDM. So every module has its own manifest file, and that's where once you configure as your link there, once you will install the add-in from LCS, there is an option called enhanced metadata service. So that's where once you enable this one, it gives you this enrich manifest hierarchy there. So under one table you have a manifest, it actually reference to this particular supply chain manifest here. If you click onto the supply chain, it actually gives you what is the under sales and marketing. If I go to the sales and marketing, it has their own manifest. If you click, so as you can see, it's actually hierarchy wise from parent to child to subchild to subchild. That's what we are doing over here. When we run this CDM util, it reads the parent hierarchy from the tables there, and it automatically loop through and try to find out all the tables there and try to push those tables, create those tables as actual SQL tables back into Azure Synapse. So that's the actual functionality of CDM util console app. Someone might think, okay, this is a very manual step and it prone to errors. Yes, that definitely. Someone If we run this one tables, and we may end up of doing some spelling mistakes, and we are figuring out what's going wrong, what's happening, why. uh, since it's a no code low code world, now why are we doing these, and who is going to perform these ones? There is another way, which if I will refer back to my architecture. So what we have discussed as of now, we started from finance and operations. We install add-in, which is an export to data lake service that copied the data and the metadata, which we have seen tables. It contains the CSV file, which is a data. Metadata is actually cdm.json file, and then it creates under the data lake. We have seen, okay, all good. Storage events. Now, Microsoft is also working on to the event grid. So what it does, uh, how I'm gonna get notified when the data is finished for my particular customers into the data lake. So what Microsoft is saying, okay, we will have a event grid when the particular data is exported and finished. We will just and export data finished, and we will let you know this particular event is finished. Then you can see here, this is a function app here, CDM util as a function app. The other part which we just have discussed here, which is at the bottom part of this diagram, is CDM Util as console app. So we have seen CDM Util as console app as of now. What it does, it creates external tables into the Azure Synapse. So which we saw, we have created a schema, it has created external tables and views respectively. So we run this command manually, and it creates data into Azure Synapse. So there is another work is in progress, which is through an automation. So you can use this CDM util in a function app too. You can do it yourself too as of today. You can hook up a event grid. It's pretty straightforward process. You can hook up the event grid and hook that to a particular table or a data entity or even to a folder. You can say, okay, whenever this status is finished, I can see a new update has happened into this data lake here, and then I'll just use a pointer, data lake here, and then my event grid will automatically initialized and it will call my function app. Function app will call a CDM util, which is again, you can call an executable file from a function app, and it will run the uh, CDM util based on to the configurations there. Uh, Function I will run, and it will automatically create all the views and the external tables into the Azure Synapse. So the upper part is actually referring to the automation. The lower part is actually is a manual process which we have seen. So the ultimate goal is same, getting the data into the Azure Synapse analytics there. So once we have data into Azure Synapse analytics, you can, as we saw, we can connect to this database from SQL Server Management Studio, and you can actually get this data into your Power BI. So that's the complete end-to-end conceptual diagram, what Microsoft is explaining about the whole process. Now, let's move forward. We have talked about these few forms there. We have talked about a CDM util here. We did see there are different folders here. I'll quickly close this one. We have tables here, we have entities here, we have change feed. Now, if we see a tables, it's a combination of all the tables from a different modules. You can activate tables, you can activate data entities. It's similarly same. Now, what is the change feed? Now, that is this is an important concept where I would like to spend few more minutes. Uh, so moving on, I would like to talk a little bit more on few other things, which is this change feed. So one of the very known conversation which people have been doing about how the change feed works and how the folder structure of the change feed, what is the structure and how it would look like. So I have just picked a few things from the Microsoft website and also from the Yammer group discussions, which I would like to highlight. When it comes to the change feed, what sort of information do we have available by default for change feed? So that's normal question. What sort of information do we have as a change feed there? What has been changed, when it got changed, and who changed, what was the last value, why did it happen, and so many other questions. So change feed, this is actually something available for every table by default. So you get a file change feed file for every table. So data change field, actually this is a CDC feature coming from the SQL Server feature, which is a SQL Server feature. So it gives you some, or it is allow the SQL Server CDC feature. The CDC folders are maintained by tables. So each table you have, as I mentioned, will get a change feed enabled. So I'm also trying to read some information right now from a Microsoft website so that I stick to the information which Microsoft has shared on different forums. Uh, then what second point is CDC folder are maintained by tables as we talked about, and one change uh, feed folder per table. So every change field is actually on a one table level. So if we look at the tables here, so every table, if we say commissioner sales group, every table is considered is comes under the change feed. anything you change into the finance and operations, it will create a change feed. It will create the history of that one, what got changed at what time. It's like lot of a history maintaining process here. So CDC also maintains log sequence number, which is LSN, and the change date or value here. Uh, all tables folder contain only latest values. All good. So change feed files are only appended and never updated. So there is no update here. So it's not, because since it's a history, we are not going to change the previous value. All the whatever you are changing, it's appending. All the information is appending. Let's say you have a customer group and you have 5 records in it. You created a new record. It will append a new record under the change feed, and then you deleted a record. It will show, okay, this record has been deleted with a proper deleted action there. Then you added a new record and then you update it. It will create 2 records into the change feed, one for the insert and the second one is for the update. So it's a that is actually Microsoft. It's actually providing you a JSON format here, which is the metadata file. You can explore more about this one. There is a Microsoft Docs article at the bottom part of this slide, which actually explains you about when it last got changed, what is the data lake modified date time, and LSN is actually coming from the Microsoft, from the SQL level, and LSN. Microsoft doesn't store this one, that's why it's this and LSN in and excuse me. So and LSN is grayed out. Excuse me. And we have a sequence value. Sequence value is actually very important here. What it does, as we saw, each data entity have multiple tables on it. Let's think about if you have enabled a data entity which contains 5 tables in it. Since this change feed exists at the table level, which means each table will have its own change feed. So there will be 5 change feeds per one data entity. Now, sequence value is first table, second table, third table, fourth table, and the fifth table. So this information will get stored the sequence of the tables within the data entity. So if you are changing one table within the data entity, the value gets updated into the first table of the data entity. It will say sequence value equals to 1 of that particular table there. So that's actually an overall concept about a change feed there. Uh, with this one, I would go and show a brief about Microsoft roadmap. Uh, So general availability of the new real-time data changes feature to provide immediate relief that was available since 1st of June. It's almost over 2 months now, almost 3 months now. It's a near real-time data changes happening from the data from the FNO to the data lake. And Microsoft is suggesting customers and partners to start implementing the data lake over BYOD, which is a good move. And I would also suggest if you are implementing a data export service from FNO, it's good option to go with the data lake now, rather than spending a lot of money and effort and the resources to your BYOD first, and then you have to change to the data lake later. Uh, Table selection experience will remain in FNO. Customer is actually responsible in reshaping into the entities. What does it mean here? You have thousands of tables in FNO, and now you are actually able to export the tables directly into the data lake for the end user, or maybe a non FNO person. He doesn't understand what are the relations between those tables. Now it's customer's responsibility in order to reshape those tables and create your own SQL views if you want to, or if you want to define new relationship between the tables. You can create, you can define relationship into your either as your data lake, or you can do this one into Azure Synapse there. So that's completely up to the customer responsibility. Uh, Again, Microsoft is heavily investing in on Synapse Link for Dataverse. So it's previously there was a concept, okay, we will get the data from financial operations, putting into the Dataverse, and then either through a dual write or whatever that would be, then we use this data pushing into the data lake. Now Microsoft is highly investing into the Synapse Link, which is a replacement of a data export service from the Dataverse side. So this is a roadmap Microsoft is working on. Again, for all the upcoming updates, anything you want to know, uh, please follow the Microsoft Talks article and Azure group. So with this one, I would like to thanks to everyone. And if we have any questions, Sarah, I'm happy to answer.
Great, thanks, Faisal. Yeah, we did actually have a couple of questions come through. Did you want me to read that out to you?
Uh, yes. Okay, I can read it. No problem.
Great. So if you go back up
Okay.
to the top, the first question was from Christina.
Yeah. Does turning on export to data lake at incurs cost? Uh, yes, it does, because you are actually using a data. You have to pay the storage account cost. You are actually pushing the data from FNO into the storage account, and then if you want to use Azure Synapse, you have to create your serverless database. There are different ways to create Azure Synapse. It can be a dedicated or it can be a serverless, but you have to check the prices. The answer is yes. So when I should use data lake or custom service for integration, especially between FNO and CE, uh, for integration between FNO and CE, Hisham, data lake is not for the integration between FNO and Dataverse. This is a separate topic. If you want to integrate between FNO and the Dataverse, my recommendation to go with the dual write virtual entities, or whatever the connectors we have available between FNO and the Dataverse. With export to data lake, we are actually pushing data from finance and operations towards or to data lake, even though as per the configuration, the dual write or the environment combination or Dataverse, these are the prerequisites to configure the data lake. But who knows? Because now the idea here is to take everything out of LCS, taking into the admin portal center. Uh, Excuse me if I'm just with admin center. Yeah. So Power Platform Admin Center. So that's might be another step from Microsoft. So next question is, does any changes to the metadata in Infinops get automatically updated in Synapse after the initial sync? Uh, when you create a new field, or you change a field name which is considered as a change in a metadata, you have to it doesn't automatically does. You have to use if you're talking about getting the data into data lake, yes it does, but you have to use the CDM Util in order to process those changes from data lake to Synapse. So CDM Util is the way, or you can also automate it through function app. When exporting to data lake, does it affect system availability? No. It's a microservice. It doesn't affect. Uh, can you create a table on top of CDC export? Uh, yes, you can create. This is called considered as a external table into the Azure Synapse. Yes. Can CDM Util push data to any Azure SQL DB or only Azure Synapse? That's a good question. I just have used CDM Util as of now to push data from uh, uh, data lake to the Synapse there. So push data into onto Azure SQL database or to any Azure Synapse. Uh, I haven't find out more. I haven't explored more. Just use this CDM util as of now for this particular pushing process from data lake to Synapse. But it's a good question. I will try to find out more insights on this one, and I'll update onto our YouTube channel when Sarah will upload it, so I can answer this question there, David. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Faisal. And thank you to everyone for tuning in and sending through your questions throughout. All the links you'll need, as Faisal just mentioned, are in the comment section. And if there's anything additional and missed, we'll add that to the on-demand version of the YouTube recording, which will be up on our YouTube channel straight after today. And you can check that out via the links we've shared in the comment section. And thank you so much again to Faisal for joining us at the Reactor Sydney. We will see you next time for another Microsoft Reactor live stream event. Have a good rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.